Hi everyone, hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah. I am a mum of two. I have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, and we have been on a very rough journey with our 9-month-old, basically just through silent reflux, which is horrendous. Really is hands down one of the hardest things I have ever gone through in my life. So I've been building up to doing this video for quite a while. I do get a lot of contact about silent reflux because I've shared lots of stuff on Instagram and the blog and YouTube and things like that, so I get a lot of contact from people about it, and I just felt like I need to sit down and do the whole story, but it literally gives me goosebumps, like just even thinking about it and talking about it. So it's taking me a very long time to sit down and do this, and I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try my best to get everything out there. I might forget things, and if I do, then I'll probably watch it back and then maybe put things in the descriptions if I have forgotten. But yeah, so Lachlan was born October last year. He is now 9 months old. From about 4 weeks old, we sort of realised that something wasn't quite right. So he was in hospital with me for 5 days because we had a lot of feeding issues. I had exclusively breast for the first month, and then he started latching after a month, but we did have a lot of breastfeeding issues. And when he was first born, he was very sleepy. He lulled me into a very false sense of security. He was just very settled, slept all the time, and then we got home on day 5, and by 1 week everything changed. Everything literally changed, and he was just such a hard baby. He just wouldn't settle, wouldn't sleep, just wouldn't do anything Isla did as a baby. He was just the polar opposite, and Rob was deployed at the time and I was up with my mum and dad's, and it was very hard to deal with, and very hard to get my head around why I didn't have a baby that was exactly the same, which looking back is such a ridiculous thing to think, but at the time you're just like, but I don't know how to do this. Like, this isn't what I remember. This is not what I know for dealing with a baby. So from about 4 weeks, things really came to a head, and even my parents were like, I don't think this is 100% normal. And I had a lot of contact with the health visitors from the breastfeeding issues, so I mentioned to them, I was like, he's never settled. He screams all the time. He won't sleep, he won't nap, he is very fussy at feeding. He's on and off, he seems in a lot of pain. I have done a video on silent reflux symptoms and things like that, so I'll pop the link to that below, so I won't go into like 100% all the symptoms because I've already done that. But yeah, he was just in a lot of pain. His tummy was very solid. He wasn't feeding great. He even smelt of acid. He used to burp a lot. He got the hiccups really bad for hours and hours, and just generally was really miserable. And he had this very specific cry that you don't know until you've heard it. The silent reflux cry is soul destroying. It could be used as a torture technique. It is so bad. It is a million times worse than a colic cry or a normal baby cry. It's just hate it. So yeah, there was just all these things that kind of went on, and my mum was like, say something to the health visitors. So I did say something to the health visitors, and I think it was somebody, that's what it was, somebody mentioned in one of my videos reflux, and I was like, well, he's not being sick all the time, so it can't be reflux. And then someone else said, oh, silent reflux. And honestly, then I started thinking, oh, I'm sure I've heard people talk about this before, but you know, first time around, if you have a really good baby, you're just a really rubbish person, and you don't listen that much to all the stuff other people are going through. And I feel so guilty now, and karma got me so badly, but I just didn't really know anything about it. So I had a Google, and it was just insane. There was this checklist, and every single thing just summed Lachlan up. Like, every single characteristic or symptom that was on there I could tick off and be like, oh my goodness, that is 100% him. Even down to the thing, they were like, silent reflux babies are often quite serious and have very serious faces. And Lachlan was just like, he was ridiculous. He was like the most serious baby I'd ever met, and just all these really crazy things. And I was just, oh, in a way I was relieved, but in a way I was like, oh my goodness, what? Like, this seems tough. And I'm not gonna lie, it has been the hardest thing I've done or gone through in a very long time. And yeah, it's awful, which is why I'm doing these sort of videos, to try and help anyone else who's going through the same thing, and not to feel alone, and to hear our experience and maybe use bits from it to help them with their experience. That's just what I'm trying to do here. So yeah, 4 weeks, so I read all that, and then I saw the health visitor, and I said, oh look, I think he might have silent reflux. Or I think I phoned them. That's what it was, I phoned them, and they were like, oh, okay, there's not much we can do about it, but we can see him and then maybe get him referred to the GP and this, that and the other. So I was like, okay. So I went down to the doctor the next day with them, and he was screaming, and the health visitor, listening to everything I was saying about him, about his sleep, about everything else, or lack of sleep and everything else, she was like, let's get you into the doctors. And luckily the first doctor I saw, both his sons had reflux, so he was great. He basically drew this little thing out and was like, well, we could start with the thickening, but you're breastfeeding, so there's no point doing that. We can go straight into ranitidine, because I'd heard a lot of people say oh, you'll get palmed off with Gaviscon to begin with, and like the thickeners, and they don't help at all. Like, you need the ranitidine, you need the omeprazole, you need the whatever else. So this guy was like, no, 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 the thickeners, we don't want you expressing and thickening after doing a month of exclusively expressing, so let's just go straight into the ranitidine. I don't think he even mentioned Gaviscon. No, I think it was purely, yeah, it was just ranitidine to begin with. We got that, and basically he said, see how it goes. It has to, with ranitidine, it's based on their weight, so the dosage obviously has to change as they, I don't know why one went up and not the other, as they get heavier, the dosage has to go up, so that sort of thing. And yeah, so we did that, and I went and got it, and I was like, right, this is going to be great. I'm going to get my baby back. We're going to have a lovely time. I'm going to claw back these newborn days I feel like I'm losing. Went and got the ranitidine. It worked for a week. It was the dream. He was amazing. He napped, and me and my parents were just like, and he didn't scream all the time, and he went to bed at night, and it was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And then a week went past, and we just crashed and burned back to the way it was before, but we didn't change anything, and he actually was worse this time around. So I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot deal with this. It's just, oh, it's never gonna get better. And I was really upset about it all. Oh, I forgot to say, in the beginning we were on 0.1 mils of ranitidine, which is the teeniest, tiniest amount. And I think after the ranitidine stopped working, I got pushed into a very, very bad place. Like, I had moments where I would be standing in my parents' front room, and I'd have Lachlan, and he'd been screaming at me for hours, and I was just rocking him back and forth and walking around with him, and I'd be looking out down my parents' drive, because they're quite a big drive, and I was like, my brain would just go, you could just put him down, you could just walk away and never come back. And it was all these really, really horrible, horrible thoughts. And I have done a bit of a blog post on this, which I'll link below, but it really does push you to some really horrible places. It got to the point where I resented him. I didn't want him near me. I was filled with anxiety. Like, the thought of him, even when he was silent, I was just waiting for the next screaming period that you never knew how long it would go on for. It would usually be at least over an hour, and you were just always on edge waiting for that. It was just horrendous. Like, I couldn't get out, I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to take him anywhere. I didn't want to go see friends. I didn't want to do anything because I had no backup with Isla. When we went out and about, I had everything. I was like, well, if she kicks off, she might need fed, so I'll feed her, or change her nappy, or give her a toy, or I know all the things she likes, so I can cheer her up, or I know how to get her to sleep. But with Lachlan, once he started, there was nothing you could do, literally nothing, apart from hold him and try and stop him from choking and hurting himself, and that was it. So to be out and about and have people staring at you and things like that, it just, even as a second time mum, it just was awful. So I can't even imagine what parents must go through if it's their first baby. And I think if Lachlan had been my first baby, I would have probably not had any more babies, because it was just so awful. Anyway, back to the kind of story about it. So then I went back to the doctors, but this time it was a different doctor I got, and this doctor wasn't so accepting of the whole reflux diagnosis. He basically said the first time I met him that he was of the school of thought that kind of felt that reflux wasn't actually a condition. And I was like, oh, splendid. And Lachlan was screaming, absolutely screaming in this little room, and I did nothing to console him, because I was like, do you know what, you're gonna listen to this and then we'll see. And he did have kids, but they obviously hadn't had those sorts of issues. So he prescribed me that thickening stuff and Gaviscon, like infant Gaviscon. And the thickening I had to express and thicken and give it to him via a syringe because he was breastfed, and I don't think you could do it with water. I can't remember. Basically it was expressed milk, and it was such a pain, and I hated it, and it made no difference. We did it for I think 2 or 3 weeks or a month. It made no difference at all, so I just stopped it. Didn't even tell them. I was like, I'm not doing this. It got to the point where I was out and about. If I ever wanted to go out and about, I'd have to have the thickener and a little thing of expressed milk and 2 little sterile containers, and mix them and keep the syringe, and it was just, oh, such a pain, and it just didn't work. So I went back and said that wasn't working, and we just got the ranitidine dosage up to the maximum it could be instead, because you can either do it, I think it's up to, I can't remember, there's a very like weird calculation, and it can be within a sort of threshold, and we got pushed up to the top threshold just to see if that worked. And then controversially it was prescribed adult Gaviscon, like very minimal, but it has a lot of salt in it, so I went with it because it was doctors and that. And then a few people mentioned on my videos like, oh, blah blah blah. And then when we moved back down here, we went to the GPs and they were like, stop that completely. So we had to stop that and got infant Gaviscon instead. But while we were up in Scotland, they wanted to refer us to the paediatricians to get omeprazole prescribed, but because we were only temporarily there and we were coming back down here, that never happened. So we came back down here, stopped the adult Gaviscon, got on the infant Gaviscon, got the ranitidine dose upped again, but it wasn't really making any difference by this point. And yeah, he was on 1.2 mils of ranitidine 3 times a day. We kind of just went with that for a while with the infant Gaviscon. So you do the ranitidine and then the Gaviscon, and then the ranitidine and the Gaviscon, like with time periods apart, because they kind of cancel each other out or something, so you can't give them together. So we did that for a while, and it just really wasn't working. It just completely stopped working. I was like, I'd rather he was on no medicine than on medicine that isn't working. So then instead of, like, down here, even here they said, oh, you have to get up to the hospital to get the omeprazole and this sort of stuff. It basically, they didn't, that never happened. They just prescribed it there and then, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So now he's on omeprazole, and it's a case of, you have the dissolvable tablets, you dissolve it in 5 mils of water and give them 3.5 mils of the actual liquid at this moment with the way he is. So that's what we're doing just now, and I felt like it was going to be this miracle cure, and I felt like it was going to help everything, because everyone, I had hundreds and hundreds of comments and messages and all sorts saying how much it helped other people's babies, and I was really excited. But I guess it has helped a bit, maybe a bit more than ranitidine, but nothing like what I was hoping it would do, to be honest. He's now 9 months and he's still on it, but I think what came as a little bit more of a turning point for us is when he could sit up, which a lot of people say. He's 9 months and he can command a crawl and roll and that, and he's done a few normal crawls, but he's not proper crawling yet, and he can like sit himself up and pull up onto things. But it was the sitting up at about 8 months that really made a huge difference to him, I think. Also starting food, a lot of people said that would help a lot, and it didn't with us. It made it so much worse. He reacted to all sorts of things, so now we're quite bland with what we give him, and he's actually better on more like fingery foods and proper like bowls of pasta and stuff rather than purees. I think again they're just too easily digestible. I mean, he does enjoy like his purees, but we try to do a mix of that and have like a lot of breads and things to just keep the acid down. So I think with him now we're at a stage where it'll probably just be a time thing. We're just gonna have to go with it and deal with it. I went back to work about a month ago, and I think I was at breaking point. I think if I had still had to be at home dealing with him and the reflux all day every day, I would have really struggled. But now he's at a really amazing nursery that Isla's at, and they can look after him just as well, if not better than me, and a few of them have experience of reflux. That's really great for understanding what he's like and looking out for signs and symptoms and letting me know if he's getting worse or if he's unsettled or if they think he's going to have a bad night. So that's nice and good. I would rather, of course I would rather he was just 100% better and it had gone, but I do think we're at a stage now where it's just going to be a case of waiting till he's older and hoping that it will just solve itself. We still often have, he is a lot better at bedtime. We are in a much better routine now. He does, even at the weekends, he naps now, which is great. It's still nothing like Isla did, but he will nap, and he will nap when we're out and about, and things are a lot better, which is why I feel like I can do this video now. I wouldn't have been able to do it, say, a month or a month and a half, 2 months ago, because I was still bursting out crying every time I talked about it. So I feel good. I feel like I've gone through this video and I haven't cried, and I'm like, yes, because I don't want to be emotional. I don't want to make other people feel sorry for me or feel bad, or this is not what this is about. I want to help you people who want to know about it. And yeah, I think it is a lot bigger issue than a lot of people think it is, and it's very misunderstood, and you just have to push for all the help you can get. Like, if you do not get a doctor that helps, then go to a different one. Just keep going, list everything, do a diary, do a routine diary, kind of keep a record of things that if they're eating food, what's making it worse and things like that, and just fight your cause, because there are things they can do to help and they should be helping you. So just, yeah, keep going, and remember that you've got this. Like, it is so tough, and it's so awful, and every time anyone said, oh well, it won't be forever, I want to punch them in the face, but it is true. And I feel like I don't want to look back in 5 years time and look at this time and think that I hated it, because I do hate it, and I did hate it, but, and this is where I might get upset, because I just feel like I was completely cheated, and I feel like I never got my baby. Like, I feel like he's just coming out of it now in 9 months, and all of a sudden he has a personality and he's smiley and nice, but for the first 6 months he just was not very nice, and there was no, they obviously can't show love at that age anyway, but I felt like he hated me, and I felt like he really just was miserable around me, and I just felt like he'd be better off with someone else and a lot of things like that. So that was very hard to deal with, and that might be a separate video, I think, because I think I've rambled on enough for now. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope this helps anyone going through it. Feel free to message me, feel free to let me know what you're going through, and I will try my best to help. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.